Some days I feel like the personal advocate for Adobe Bridge. It's one of those programs where I don't know how I lived without it before it existed. I use Bridge almost daily to sort and organize my images and to sort and organize them as they're imported. I have a folder of iPhone images and I want to begin filing them away. They've got fairly useless names when they're imported, so I'm going to batch rename and individually rename. If I want to change the name of just one file, I can click once on the file name at the bottom, and I'll call this Baby Beach. And I like lowercase extensions, so I'll change that, but you can actually do that through batch rename. Here's a shot of the Golden Gate Bridge. So I'll type Golden Gate. And here is one of the park. Now the next several are a bit in a series. This is actually Russell Brown, one of the original guys on the Photoshop team with the Knoll brothers. He still works at Adobe and he's one of their chief scientists, still working on Photoshop. But there are 3 images in a series and I'm going to shift click to select all 3. And I'll choose Tools, Batch Rename, and this is Russell. And I will do a sequence number of 2 digits, since there's only 3 images being renamed. When I hit rename, all of this is exactly as if you went to your operating system and hand renamed every file. If I go out to my desktop and look inside my lesson files and lesson 2 and my iPhone photos or images, there's Russell Brown, there's the baby beach, there's the park. If I come back to Bridge and rename these Bay Bridge, batch rename, Bay Bridge, there we have it. If I check back at my operating system, they got renamed. And another little aside, there is a free app for your phone called Photoshop Express, where I took this shot and turned it into that shot in just a few seconds. Photoshop Express lets you do brightness, contrast, vibrance, a lot of the dials I'm used to in Camera Raw. In fact, that brings me to raw editing. Let me rename this Firehouse. And if I wanted to file these away, Bridge will even let me create folders. So I could select Photoshop projects and do File, New Folder, and start filing them. But there aren't that many, so I'll leave them all in one spot. But here is Camera Raw correction. If you get outdoor shots in good lighting, smartphones will do an excellent job. But we can push it farther. If I choose File, Open in Camera Raw, on JPEGs, TIFFs, and anything shot in RAW, I can go far above and beyond what the camera can do, and I do everything in one spot. Unlike Photoshop's layers and adjustment layers, you may have to do 5 or 6 adjustment layers to accomplish the same thing you do in one spot in Camera Raw. So when I choose Open in Camera Raw, I'll start with this one by just darkening the blacks, and that helps contrast overall. I can use contrast as well, but I find it can start to posterize quickly if you go too far. I could check my highlights, and I'm losing a little bit of detail here so I can protect those. I can adjust shadows up or down. Ooh, the shadows are really helping this image. Clarity is mid-tone contrast, so everything between light and dark, and clarity almost makes it look sharper. And then I might be able to lighten now that I've made those adjustments. And if I want richer color, I can boost the vibrance. In fact, if I see a color shift in one direction or the other, I can drag this right and left to remove color casts. I'll turn off this warning for highlight clipping. So I can get just the shade of blue that I want for the sky and try to get exactly the shade of the Golden Gate Bridge, which is sort of orange-ish. There we go. Before, after. It's like a whole different camera took this shot. And if I'm losing some detail I wanted to keep under there, I could open up my shadows a little bit more, but I like to let that fade away, and I like the richness of the sky. So when I hit done, I get a little icon indicating that I've created an adjustment on this using Adobe Camera Raw or ACR, and it's forever editable. I could come back and double click, and if I wanted to make this a little bit darker, I just slide the exposure down and hit done. So it is truly non-destructive editing. So please look through your images, use Bridge to name them so you can find them later, give them meaningful names to you. And the last thing I'll finish with is I'll select the images of Russell Brown, and in metadata, extra data about the file, stored in the file, I can put a description in or just a link to Russell's website. I'll put it in both spots. There we have it. When I click away and click back, that is now applied to each image. So I hope you love Bridge as much as I do. It has kept my hard drive in order. It has helped me find images when I go to hunt for them because I am using it to name files as I'm importing them or copying them, attaching extra information in metadata, and organizing all through Adobe Bridge.